Hello, Put Me in Coaching family. It is Sunday, June 1st. Cannot believe we are already in June. It is going to be an incredible month. So, tonight we are going to talk about disciplining your disappointments. And this is such an important topic because it's June 1st, right? Maybe you didn't hit your goals in May. Maybe you fell off the path in May. And that's okay because now's the time to reset, refocus, and make the last 7 months of the year your absolute best effort. Okay. And we're going to talk about what do you do when you get off track? What do you do when maybe you're lacking the willpower? Willpower, we think, is such a huge factor in what we do. And while part of it is, there's so much more than just willpower, right? It's so important that we understand the science behind things, the motivation, and all of that, right? So, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So, if you're watching live, go ahead, drop a hashtag live in the chat. If you're watching the replay, go ahead, drop a hashtag replay. Doesn't matter when you get the information, just as long as you are getting the information. All right. So, as we gear up for June, right, we're going to have a lot of different things going on, right? It's summertime. So changes in schedules, changes in routines. Maybe the kids are home for the summer. Maybe you're off of work for the summer. Or maybe it's super hot outside like it is here. So maybe you can't do certain things that you normally were doing outside at certain times. So you might have to adjust your schedule a little bit. All right. And that's okay. Right. We're going to talk about how to really come up with a strategy to be bulletproof when it comes to reaching your goals, even when you fall a little bit off track. Discipline your disappointments, right? Because you're going to have times where you're not motivated. You're going to have times where you don't feel like it, right? All of those are kind of disappointments, if you will. And you're going to have times where you're putting in your best effort, but maybe you're just not quite hitting your goals. And you're just like, man, I don't get it, right? We have to learn that discipline. And we've talked so much about that this year. I've defined it, right? I gave you that quote: discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. But that's where the concept of willpower kind of comes in. But when you make it a part of your identity, it no longer has to be willpower, right? You have to make the decision, right? So we talk a little bit about being relentless. Tim Grover's book, Relentless, talks about decide, act, decide, commit, act, succeed, repeat. But it's that act part that we don't always want to do. I was talking to some people the other day about manifestation, and they were like, man, I just don't get it. I don't get the manifestation part of things. And I don't understand how people think that they can just start putting something out there and it just comes to them. And that's not really what happens, right? We're rewiring our brain. And that's why it happens. That's why manifestation is such a powerful tool, because we're rewiring our subconscious to help us make the decision that then allows us to do whatever actions we need to do to reach our goals, right? So if we're telling ourselves, so take scripting, for example. We did a whole class on scripting earlier, but we talk about scripting, right? So we're scripting that I eat clean and I feel great. I love the way I feel when I eat clean. I get all of my workouts in with ease, right? Whatever you're scripting, when you're scripting that over and over and over again, you're drilling that into your subconscious so that when you go to get off track a little bit, or you go to maybe skip a workout or eat something off of plan or whatever that looks like, your subconscious takes over and says, wait a minute, no, this isn't what we want to do, right? We don't do this because we are committed to reaching and achieving these goals. And so we don't do X, Y, and Z anymore. Maybe it's binging TV instead of doing your workout. Maybe it's hitting the snooze button, right? That mental battle of I'm not getting out of bed because I want to sleep in, right? So when we talk about that, it's really important to understand that while there is a little bit of a willpower component, you've got to make a decision, right? You have to opt in. We talk about the 7-step signature system. Opt in is the first one. If you don't opt in, which means get up and do something, right? Make a decision, go do whatever it is you're supposed to do. If you're not opting in, then you're losing the battle, right? And that's where we can make ourselves with that discipline. We can just say, hey, listen, this is what we do, right? And a lot of times, and it's different for everyone, right? So a lot of times it works better when somebody writes it out like, hey, this is what I do, this is my schedule, right? When you think about it, if you are someone like myself who I really work hard at what my calendar is, like I look at my calendar all the time, and whatever my calendar says, that's what I do. Right. And so maybe you're that person. Maybe you need to put something on your calendar or put it in a schedule. And that's how you're able to start creating that discipline. Okay. So that's the first thing. You've got to create the discipline. And when you create that discipline, then the disappointments that come, the goals that don't maybe get reached right when you want them to, or the thing you thought was going to happen that doesn't happen, it doesn't derail you from your goals. And that's what's key, because a lot of times we think we mess up one time and we haven't developed the discipline of the daily habits for it to not affect us. And so then we say, well, forget it. I already screwed up today, so I might as well just continue on and do whatever it is that I want to do because I messed all of today up anyway. So, and it's Thursday, so I might as well just wait until Monday to start over, right? We've all done that. I know I certainly have before. And so it's really important when you have that opt in, we're opting in every single time we make a decision. Okay. We're making that decision over and over and over again, several times a day, right? We're constantly making decisions. And that's the beauty of this. You can discipline your disappointments several times throughout the day. Something doesn't go the way you want it to, great. What can I do to change that? And if there's nothing you can do to change it, then don't worry about it, right? If there is something you can do to change it, then change it. So I think it's important to constantly evaluate, which is why we track. So you see how it all goes into creating those daily habits that create the daily discipline. Because if we don't have that daily discipline, then it is so much harder when we're opting in and making a decision. We tend to make the easier decision, which the easier decision is our old habits. That's why they say old habits die hard. Because if you're not consciously making the decision to do something different, you're going to fall back on what your habits are. The good news is when you create new habits, then that becomes your habit. And it's very hard to make a new habit and create a new, it's very hard to not do what it is you're supposed to do once you've made it a habit, right? It's hard for me to not go to the gym. I don't feel like I've had a complete day unless I've gone to the gym and gotten some sort of movement in, right? Something. I have an accountability partner the other day that I was talking to, and we were both working really late that day. And it was like 11:30, and we were getting off the phone. And she's like, "Did you do your workout today?" I said, "I worked out a little bit. I didn't do the full one, but I did do something, right? I didn't do what I planned, but I did something." And she said, "Good." She's like, "Because I didn't, and I've got to go do something now before midnight because I've got to get it in because we know that we function better when we work out. No matter when we get it in, we feel much better and more accomplished when we get that workout in." Okay. And to that point, it was interesting because I typically, when I go to the gym super early in the morning, I don't lift weights. That's my cardio time. right? But I had to shift my schedule. Talking about changes in routines and disciplining your disappointments, my schedule's changed, right? I've got new responsibilities. And so my schedule has changed. So it's been really tough to go at my old times that I was lifting weights. And so I've had to back it up and start going at 5 a.m. some days to lift weights. And so what that took was my trainer adjusting his schedule too, because that's just how it had to be, right? If I was going to make it happen, but instead of me just saying, "Oh, I can't do it because the time doesn't work that I've been doing for the last 5, 6, 7 years," it was, "No, I've got to adjust the time and I've got to figure out what it is I need to do." Right. And so that was a conversation I had to have with my trainer, like, "Hey, I need you here at 5 a.m. now." And so when you think about that, that is discipline. That is having that habit to where, okay, I've got to adjust. I've got to figure out where I need to go. So, how do we start creating these habits? Right? The accountability piece is huge. That's huge. And you have to make yourself do it. There's no magic wand that you can wave and just say, "Oh, well, now I have these new habits." No, you have to make yourself, you have to decide, commit, act, succeed, and repeat, right? Decide, commit, act. You have to do something. You have to make it happen. And once you make it happen enough and you're consciously making the decision to do it, that's when it becomes second nature, it becomes a habit, and then it becomes a discipline. And so then it's just you're easily able to get over those disappointments because you say, "Okay, well, here's my discipline," right? I'm just going to keep it moving. I'm going to keep developing these habits because I know these habits are for the good, right? Think about the bad habits you have, right? Do you have to think about doing them? Do you have to think about whatever it is, whatever habit you have? Do you have to think hard about making the decision to do them? The answer is probably no, right? If it's the habit that you're wanting to change, you don't have to think hard about doing it, right? You have to think hard about not doing it. And that's where you know you're starting to really rewire your brain when you start thinking about, do I really want to do this? Right? That's when you start understanding how that your brain and your subconscious is rewiring, and there's several different ways you can do it. Scripting is one way that's a great tool to get the wheels turning, okay, and to support the actions that you're taking. But at the end of the day, if we don't take action, it's not going to magically happen for us. So you have to take the action. And when we're doing the scripting, we're doing the manifestation, right? Manifesting, bringing whatever it is we want in. What that's doing is that is saying to our and reaffirming to our subconscious that, hey, this is what we want. So we need to make ourselves create the habits to get where it is we want to be. So if you find yourself continuing to fall back on bad habits, ask yourself, why? What is keeping me here? What am I afraid of? What am I worried is going to happen if I stop doing this and start doing something that I know is going to help me reach my goals? And why, again, going back to the why do I want to reach the goal that I'm wanting to reach? And it's got to be crystal clear. You have to understand, why do you want whatever it is that you're working toward? And then figure out the habits that, again, the behaviors and habits that are moving you away from that, and figure out, why are you so worried about giving it up? What do you think you're going to be missing if you give it up? And also ask yourself, is it going to be there when you do reach your goal? And if it's going to be there when you do reach your goals, well, then stop doing it for a little while. You can always go back, right? What are you afraid of is going to happen? And that could be fear of success, right? Fear of judgment, fear of people talking, fear of, you've got to figure out, what is it that you are scared is going to happen if you give up the things that are moving you away from your behavior? And what are you afraid is going to happen when you reach your goals? And then you have to figure out, what is this serving? Like, what purpose is this serving? What feeling do you get when you're doing the things that are moving you away from your behaviors? And that's the thing. When we're eating things that are off plan, you get that instant feel good, but then later on, it's like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, right? You have the regret later on. But it's that instant, and it's the instant gratification you have to overcome. And when you can recognize, hey, this is only going to give me instant gratification, it's not going to give me long-term gratification, that's when you can start to rewire your brain. But you have to stop and think. You have to stop and think about it and figure out, again, why are you so afraid of giving up the things that are moving you away from your goals? And why are you so afraid of achieving the goals that you're working toward? And when you can answer those questions, that's when your subconscious is really going to start to change, because you're going to allow the habits in that are going to make it necessary for you to act and get to where you want to be. Okay, so think of one behavior that you consistently engage in that moves you away from your goals. And then what is the one action you need to do that's going to counteract that, that's going to serve the same purpose? It's going to fill the same function, but it's going to help move you toward your goals. That's what we call replacement behaviors. And I know this is a little bit technical, but when you think about it, it's like, okay, what am I getting from this? What's something positive that's going to move me towards my goal that's going to give me the same thing? And that's where a lot of times we get that disconnect, because we have the disappointments, but we're not disciplined enough because we haven't figured out what's going to serve the same purpose of the away behavior. What's a toward behavior, a positive behavior that's going to help us reach our goals, that's going to serve the same purpose. All right. So write down, what one behavior do you want to focus on changing this week? We're going to discipline it, right? We're going to discipline that one behavior. So, what one behavior do you want to discipline enough to create a new habit to replace it, right? And then, what is the habit that you're going to replace it with? And it's very simple when we think in terms of reaching our goals, right? Maybe the first behavior is not going to the gym, right? Not getting your workout in. Well, we're not doing it because it gives us the sense of instant gratification. So you have to swap instant gratification. You've got to replace it with long-term gratification. So you have to start thinking about, hey, how am I going to feel after I go to the gym? How am I going to look after I go to the gym? How is the gym going to increase my health? Same thing for eating on and off plan. Right? We eat the things that are off plan because they fill that void, and they say, okay, it tastes good, right? So it gives you that instant gratification, but you've got to replace it with that delay of gratification. So you have to, and one way you can do this is, okay, set a timer after you eat whatever it is that is on plan, right? And set a timer for 10, 15 minutes. And you say, man, I feel so much better now that this is what I ate, right? And you can watch the timer to really think about, hey, I'm going to feel so great. I may not love what I'm eating right this second, but I'm going to feel the feelings that I would get if I was eating the chocolate or the cookie right then. I'm going to feel super proud in 10 minutes, right? And that rewires your subconscious. So just think about, what's the behavior that is moving you away from your goals that you want to change? And then what is the behavior that you're going to replace it with? And then figure out how you're going to replace it, right? What is the habit and the discipline that you're going to create this week? And then you have to do it over and over and over, right? Decide, commit, act, succeed, repeat. So that action is key. And sometimes you just have to make yourself do it. You have to make yourself start. But then once you start, it gets to be that snowball effect and it gets better and better and better and easier. And then you've created a discipline and you're able to discipline your disappointments. All right. I know I gave you a ton of information in this 20 minutes. So I want to let you digest that. Really work hard on figuring out those behaviors that are moving you away from your goals. What behaviors are going to move you towards your goals? And how do you create the same feelings you're getting by not doing it, other than the negative feelings, right? Because the only reason we're doing something is because we're getting something out of it. Okay. So, what are you getting out of the good things that you're doing? And start to hold on more to those and focus more on those. All right. I hope everyone has a fantastic week. I will see you back here same time next Sunday, 7 p.m. And until then, send me a text message. Let me know what goal you are working on this week. I cannot wait to see the behaviors that you're coming up with to replace them. And I will see you back here next Sunday. Bye, everyone.